And we are live. Bear with us for a moment or two, folks, as we get folks coming in the door before we get started. Today's episode is obviously not, well, I guess it is an original series episode to a degree. We're going to be watching today for Deep Space Nine's Trials and Tribble-ations. That was an amazing, the whole episode really is like an Easter egg to Star Trek. It was part of 96, that would have been what, the 30th anniversary. They decided early on in the year that all the active shows were going to be doing something that would acknowledge earlier generations. So this was the season, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, and if so, you can leave comments in the checkbox because you know how that can be with me. But I'm pretty sure this is, in fact, the exact same year that Voyager gave us that unique flashback episode that brought us Captain Sulu on the Excelsior again, because Tuvok apparently served there, but of course, and the actor did. The actor had appeared in an earlier Star Trek. So that was what they did, and our friends Ira and company, they really bounced around quite a bit trying to come up with what they were going to do. They didn't really have a whole lot. They talked briefly about utilizing an original episode footage from the original episode of any original episode that they could revisit and maybe put in like a frame, sort of like what the Menagerie did for the Cage. Ironically, one of the biggest things that got them off that track initially was that there are contractual requirements with all the voice actors that appeared in the episode that would have to be renegotiated. Because remember, the residuals and everything are long since gone. So if you were, obviously Shatner, but if you were Charlie Brill, who played Arn Darvin, then that meant that if you're going to have this scene in there, you're going to have to, he's going to have to get some payment for it. And they really weren't concerned with the money, but they were concerned with the time that would slow it down. And so they put that aside, didn't do a whole lot with it. And then, ironically, they were having discussion in the commissary one afternoon. And they talked about the trouble with tribbles. They say, I wonder if we could do something with that. And they were faced with the exact same fundamental thing. And I guess the question came up about, the voiceover, the voice actors from the first one. And amazingly, sitting in the commissary several tables away was Charlie Brill, who played Arn Darvin.
Wow.
And they both knew him. I think he was a regular on another series by this point, obviously much older in life. So they went over and introduced themselves to the table, and had a very, very pleasant discussion, and discovered that he would be overwhelmingly positive about, anything, if they wanted to work with, the Tribble. Certainly anything that he was involved in would never be, a roadblock for them. I don't think he had any idea that that the story would revolve around, Arn Darvin. So they went back and they talked about, and they tried some things, and I can't remember exactly 100% what all they tried, but the existing masters in 1996 that they were looking at for the original series, of course, were 35 millimeter, but they had, at that point, they hadn't realized that they had been remastered for the Japanese video discs that were made around 1992. Because if you remember way back when, for those of you who've been on the channel before, they made an extraordinary video, a laser video set for Japan that was sold in set 1, 2, 3, that had the very best high resolution scan transfers ever done, which were far superior to the transfers that were done for home video, even right up through the late 80s. When you see one of these clips somewhere, the easiest way to find them is you will notice that they have kanji burned into the bottom of the screen. And the other thing, which is a win for some people and a loss for others, they were remastered into 16:9. But when they did that, It's like, well, you blow up the image and you crop around it. And now you're 16 by 9, but you've lost, everything that's in the letterbox, if you remember, is hacked away. So I think today they would never do something like that because it would be danger of screwing up the images or something. But back then, it was neat. And so what happened was you actually see in the United Kingdom and in Canada. I think the United Kingdom might have been Sky TV, and Canada might have been I can't remember the name of there. But for those of you up there, Lynn, if you're hearing this, I apologize. They were shown that on television, and I found out about it because I did a video real early on where I talked about and showed a film. I showed it not a film clip, but a photograph of a 16 by 9 original. And it didn't take long for folks to come out of the work. Jim, they never did a 16 by 9. It's never been done that way. But then at that point, I'm thinking, okay, because I didn't know about the Japanese set at the time. I thought, okay, that you're right. It's obvious they cropped it. So I guess, my bad. But then I got people write me letters from the UK and from Canada, and they said that the video was triggered a memory with them. And that was they remembered seeing Star Trek in HD, right around the year 2000 or so in Canada and the UK. And they said they remembered seeing details and stuff they'd never seen before. Both of them described the kanji at the bottom of the screen because it was burned into the master that Japan had. So anyhow, they discovered that the original negatives, of course, the 35 millimeter negatives, were retrievable from the Salt Cavern archives. So they went back and they were able to grab the original TV series without any special optics. They got the master. I can't remember. Yeah, they got the master, but before the optics were put in for post-production. And that allowed them to bring it in at the higher resolution, bring it in and edit it digitally, just like they were, they would shoot the regular show. They'd shoot Deep Space Nine, bring it over digitally, and did all the compositing and editing there. And that's one of the reasons why it's very difficult to justify doing an HD remaster and upgrade to Deep Space Nine, because the opticals were never filmed in HD. They were always in digital. So they found that, and then like a day or two later, Brannon maybe, and one of the producers brought in a clip where he had Forrest Gumped a couple of the guys into the Trouble with Tribbles, and it was like, okay, we got to do this, and that's how Trials and Tribulations ended up being the picked on thing going forward. There is a book, of course there is, and there will be an affiliate link, even better, in the bottom of this we posted. There's a book called The Making of Trials and Tribulations, Deep Space Nine, that I recommend to folks. You can get it on Amazon, obviously. I think it's self-published through Amazon, but it is the folks that were involved in Day Zero, which is where I got that story from. It's within like the first chapter or two at the beginning of the book. Okay, so let's do some. I had a couple comments here I want to address. So, okay, so I want to point out. So, thank you, 1987. So sorry about that. Apparently, some of the notifications were late. And so that's why a few people, there was a little bit delay, then people popped in like normal. The other thing I noticed, guys, for those of you who are listening to us, is while we're not necessarily what I would consider to be a 7-second delay to protect us from censors, I do believe we're a good 2 or 3 seconds ahead of the live stream. Because if you actually watch on another device, which I've learned quite painfully, don't do if you got an open mic. But if you watch, you can see that it doesn't sync up. So I end up looking at the digital people counter, say 0 for like the first 4 or 5 seconds, and then suddenly people have started connecting in. What do we got? Red Shirt Bob, welcome back, my friend. I am totally looking forward to this one too. This is a guilty pleasure for me. And in a few minutes, I'm going to shut up and let the rest of these folks speak as we move into it. But this is a guilty pleasure for me because We all love Star Trek, the original series. That's why we're here. That's what's brought all of us together today for this video. But many of you who've been on the channel for a while know that my favorite, if you had to tell me you were going to erase every Star Trek in the world but one, the one I would be forced begrudgingly to say don't delete is Deep Space Nine, because of the character arcs, the story arcs. It was the first time that, a very young Jim loved the way the show had been written. And of course, it was not written the way Gene wanted it to be written. There's a lot of discussion about, oh, he approved it. Susan Sackett's gone on the record many times as saying he would have hated it, never approved it if he'd known exactly what they were going to do. So while I don't ever want to call something convenient, the timing was perfect because he would have prevented it from going out. I have not heard if they actually built props. Now, later on in the book that I have, I might actually read into that, because I'm going to be doing a series of videos on the main channel, taking you guys through all the wonderful ship models they built, because they built A7 again. They used and built a D7. They also, of course, did the 5.5, I think it's 5.5 feet, but maybe, 5.5 foot Enterprise. All practical models, all shot optically and beautifully. So I'll get into that. And at the same time, I'll see if I can swing together to see, did they use any props that were still available, or even just get remade? Because I'm sure the folks at Paramount's Union Shop probably could have produced them pretty easily. And okay, so I'm going to shut up for a few minutes and let you guys just chime in as we get ready to start this.
Jim, I can't see. Is Paul on today?
I do not see him yet, but I'm glad that you mentioned that. Thank you. I had been looking for Paul Newett. He normally joins us on these, and it doesn't, at least in the software I'm using now, I don't see people as they enter the room. I only see them if they chat, and it goes through the chat process. But Paul is safe. For a couple of you guys that I know that I had mentioned a couple streams and comments that I've been sending out, I was concerned because I hadn't heard from him concerning the fires, but he is safe in completely not in danger. And bonus points, he's planning to be at Wonderfest this year.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, hey, Paul, if you see this later, Jim told me you said hi, so I just wanted to shout out to you and say hi back. Appreciate you having when you join us. So it's always a pleasure.
So, David, when Trials and Tribulations came out, because you've always, I pictured you always like you were born in that office and just grew up there. Do you remember, can you think back to the folks down there and their reaction to it? Because, I mean, even if they're not dyed-in-the-world Star Trek fans, which we know they all are, at least some degree of it because of this career they've chosen, they're all tech heads. When it comes to that stuff, we're all fascinated with new and twisted things. So was there any discussion beyond the normal water cooler stuff when that came out down there?
Oh, always. And they always, we always would do like the background, and so where was the division? And so some of the noticeable things is that, because you've got the corridors, and so, the greebles on the decks and stuff like that. And so you get it's usually gray, blue. There was a yellow one that was up high, and then a bright yellow one that was the conical one in the original series that was sort of yellow and stuff like that. But all of a sudden, someone noticed in the Deep Space Nine one, there was a yellow one that is just like, wait a minute, and we're all been searching, and it's just like, was that the new set, or was that one of the old sets? And we've been and I can't find in the original series that greeble in the original series where they had it, and it's just like, I wonder if that was a break point where they took the original master and put a break point to where the Deep Space Nine actors and stuff like that was just a Q thing and stuff like that was then. But you can look at the corridors and stuff like that. You go up to the original series set tour.
I was just thinking about that, yeah.
And it's spooky eerie is because they actually use the lighting similar to what the original was, and you stand in that corridor and just your spine just moves. So like I'm on the Starship Enterprise.
Wow.
There'll be noticeable things, but the all of us who saw it and stuff like that, it's to see the Enterprise. It's just like that. It's just gorgeous. It is just Doug Drexler, the rest of them did fantastic in reproducing the case, the D7 and the other ones. What was interesting is always the debate is that, of course, in this one is that you see the D7 go by and the Aztecs on top. Well, if you notice is that no one ever saw the top of the original D7, and it's just like, well, there's a debate because Gatinga always has the Aztecs, and it's just like, is this
for one of the episodes where they show the side shot of it going by, and you can tell
right?
the very top leading down. There's no Aztecing on it, but
we also have the two surviving models.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and
especially the Poe model, because the Poe model never got disassembled by Magic Cam.
Yeah, so that's always in it. So it's the filming miniatures don't have the Aztec, so it's just like, yep, like you got to say didn't have the Aztec.
Right.
Michael, what was your initial thought when you saw it?
Oh, it was such a delight because, I mean, no one had seen the Constitution class Enterprise since the original series.
Yeah.
It had never been done. So
The DVDs had not been released yet, so we just never saw it.
I mean, you could always watch what was on VHS or whatever, but nothing original had been done with a Constitution class ship that I know of up to that point that I can think of. And so this was actually finally a chance to see like new footage, shot in modern special effects technology of I don't know about y'all, but my favorite ship. And actually being able to see it, in detail and not, in the grainy 19-inch black and white screen that I saw it as a kid, And so, I mean, that was such a delight. And of course, the whole crossover of it, just the DS9 folks, getting to interact with the original series. And of course, Dax just fanboying,
Providing the Tribble count that Spot provided in the first one.
Yeah.
Because she rattled it off just like he did. It's like she,
I mean, the closest thing to it really that I can think of is like those old scientists from Strange New Worlds. I mean, the same kind of crossover type episode with fanboying on the original series and such and all. It was, just like that, only I think it was even more special back then just because, never done it before.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're kind of used to, because of technology and being spoiled, we're kind of used to this kind of thing now. We're jaded. Mm-hmm. Whereas back then, I mean, I remember how shocked I was when I went to see Forrest Gump. And to me, the best scene in the entire movie, technically, was, and I think it might have been in black and white, I remember, but it was him waiting in the reception line to meet Richard Nixon and shake his hand.
Right.
And he gets up to the president and goes, "I gotta pee." And it was so perfectly done that it was something I never would have imagined. Okay, we are getting ready to start the actual live stream itself. And so I just want to give everybody a heads up if you're watching this, the way this works, and I've had the little ticker thing running across the top of the screen to try to help out folks that have never joined us before. If this is your first time on a watch party, welcome. We are tickled to death to have you here. We do these about every 2 weeks or so, under normal circumstances, and they're quite fun. They really are. I enjoy talking with the viewers and among all of ourselves. We quite often will bring in a scheduled guest. Believe it or not, I'm not sure exactly how practical this would actually end up being, but I can actually have as many, I think it's 8 or 9 co-hosts in these windows. So we have plenty of room at the bar, ladies and gentlemen. So we're getting ready to start this thing. Now, unfortunately, normally I would have given you a URL that you could type on any device that you wanted, and it would take you to the original Star Trek episode that we were watching. But unfortunately for Deep Space Nine, it is only available streaming on Paramount Plus. Now, doesn't mean you can't see it on Amazon or Apple TV. Yes, you can. It's one of the additional add-on tiers. So I invite you to watch along the episode with us, either via Paramount Plus or one of the other premium packages you're using, or just pull out the good old DVD and watch it with us. I'm going to start a video in a moment that's going to take over the vast majority of the screen, and it's going to do a 30-second screen cap every 30 seconds. It is not as good as watching the video, but it keeps me out of trouble with CBS. They get really, really picky about these things, and I got my hand slapped once. I'm not risking that one again. So we're going to go ahead and get ready and start that. I will give everybody some forewarned knowledge that the version we're going to see, it looks like the AVI file and the MP4 file that I got, that the person who played it and recorded it did not let it go. It didn't let it go in a native aspect ratio. You'll see what I'm talking about, and you will recognize it when you see it. It's what your TVs do sometimes when they try to fit, they try to fit something into a ratio that isn't 4:3. However, it gives us everything we need to be able to know what we're talking about and move forward. So bear with me as I go ahead and bring up the movie. If you haven't yet, now would be a good time to go in the other room and grab some popcorn. And let's see how this works. There we go. Make the sound go away. Yes, I know that is not from the original series or from Deep Space Nine, but I just love that intro screen. And you can see what I'm talking about. It's got that little bit of that squash thing that happens sometimes when you tell it to just fill up the entire screen on a video when it's not natively letterboxed or whatever. Mm. This episode it triggers so many memories on both scales that I didn't expect.
It's blended so well together.
Yeah, obviously it tugs at the heartstrings with the original series, but having watched it this week in preparation for this, it's the first time I've seen it since it aired, and so it also pulled at the heartstrings for just how much time has passed since the end of Deep Space Nine, and we don't tend to think of the series as being old. We only think of the original one as being old. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
No, I rewatched it last night in prep for this, and I was actually amazed how it was a lot funnier than I even remember it being. Yeah, and
I love these two guys.
The deadpan nature of these temporal department guys, just so humorless.
It was originally written, and if you actually go back and listen to their names, the names are variations of Mulder and Scully. But by the time it was actually recorded, it was patterned more off Dragnet than it was X-Files, but they kept the names the same. And I think what you just said, Mike, is dead on. I think that's what they found, was that deadpan delivery was what made it even better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's when I watched it a couple nights ago in preparation for this, I'm still blown away by how well it's blended. The original series episode and the new footage is blended together. It's just superb. They've done an amazing job with this episode.
Charlie Brill on Darwin himself. One of the enabling things that allowed them to choose this particular way of a tribute for the 30th anniversary was they'd been throwing around a bunch of ideas, including using original footage and discussing, what would the contracts be like to get all the contracts, to get releases from all the original people. And they looked across the commissary, and there was Charlie Brill sitting at a table having lunch. He was working on the lot that week. They went over, introduced themselves, and he was obviously ecstatic over any potential. I don't think he had any idea that he'd actually end up being, one of the bigger characters in this episode, and therefore was going to earn maybe more money now than he ever did off the original episode. But yeah, I don't know if we'd be watching this had it not been for that commissary story especially since both Ronan Braga and Ronald Moore, I think, both said that was the turning point for them. They knew it was like a sign on the wall right now when they saw that.
Poor Worf is the butt of so many jokes in this episode.
Yes.
Like Klingon smell.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like,
Turkey smell.
and I'm sure we'll see it, and it's like, those are Klingons? Yes, they are. We don't talk about it.
Best joke in Deep Space Nine, I think.
Yep. I'm so glad that the way the anniversary hit, it actually was potentially going to hit early enough to be the first episode of season 5 or towards the end of season 4. And I think either one would have been fine. But I'm so glad that the timing worked that it did, because by the time the Deep Space Nine crew got to this point in the series, they had nailed the delivery. The series was as detail and feature rich and character rich as it was ever going to get. And so if they had tried something like this in like the first season or the second season, which is where all the Star Trek shows since the original, all of them have always struggled with season 1. So I think if they had tried something earlier, it wouldn't have worked and we wouldn't be as fond of it. So the timing on this was beautiful. Thank you, SWAT. You're absolutely right. November 4th, 1996. And this is the second, if I remember correctly, this is the second variation of the intro for Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I think it was reorchestrated, maybe with a little more trumpets and horns in it.
They definitely added that kind of backbeat to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the original version was beautiful, but it was kind of slow. It was very beautiful and majestic, but it kind of it felt slow to me. And adding that little boom, 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 in the background kind of picked up the tempo a little bit. Still kind of kept the beauty of it and all, but just made it a little more engaging for me, at least.
I'm with Bob on this one. Yeah, I got a chill too when the Enterprise appears. It's amazing.
Yeah,
just amazing.
Yeah, because back then in the my real early Star Trek years, I guess these would be the Gen 2 years. I deliberately didn't read any kind of spoilers or anything like that would show up in Starlog or even in TV Guide, about what's coming up next or whatever, because I liked the idea of experiencing each Trek episode with no expectations. And I was so happy with that because I had the exact same reaction, Mike, that you did. It was just like a very, very strong emotional reaction. And I'm glad I stayed away from anything that might have shown me, the models or work in progress type thing prior to that, because I wouldn't want it to soften that moment.
Yeah, I do remember some of the promotions for it showing the shot of O'Brien in the lineup talking to Kirk, just like a still shot from that, just kind of as a teaser for look what we Forrest Gumped it, as you put it earlier.
Yep. Yeah, I saw the photo of that too. I don't remember where it came up. It might have been most of the Star Trek things that did not appear, news things that I did not get from Starlog. It came from this funky little paper magazine that was put in the back of the Virginian pilot Ledger Star called Parade Magazine. And I think they may have done that, nationally. I think Parade's more than just one little area. And I think I actually remember seeing a photograph in that one. Aha.
Just noticed the impulse engines are blue on that shot.
Yep.
Minor detail, but yeah. And we just missed another one of those great lines, 17 temporal violations. The man was a menace.
Yeah. What's interesting is listening to David Gerald as he he had a hand in this, and basically, they heard about it, and the New York, I think it was the New York Times, was going to interview him and stuff like that because it's coming up on the anniversary of the Trouble with Tribbles, and actually David Gerald said I'd like to endorse it to I guess Ronald Moore and stuff like that. And he said, well, what would it cost? And it's just like, well, just acknowledgement that, I wrote the original one and being an extra on it. So David Gerald is somewhere in there. I'm keep trying to look where David Gerald is. And also he, as an extra, they actually used him to help match the filming together, with the original, shots and stuff like that. And because he wrote one of the animated series, and he's evidently he's got a couple more scripts for stuff down the road and stuff like that to do. So that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I had to transition off my headset because it was such a wonderful idea, but I didn't charge it completely. So I heard everything. I figured I need to do the transfer to the laptop before it cut me off or something. Ronald Moore, Renee. I think, didn't Renee go with him to Battlestar Galactica? Does anyone remember that? I seem to remember seeing them working as a production team or a writer team for quite a few years. I just don't know if he stayed behind with these guys or, I don't know.
But that's the second. You're talking about the second version of Battlestar Galactica, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the second version, yeah. Because I know Ronald D. Moore, I think, was the creator and the showrunner for that.
Mm-hmm.
He also was involved. I can't remember at what level of production, but I'm pretty sure he was involved in 24. I think that was the first time I ever saw his credit somewhere. Okay, interesting. SWAT says Dennis McCarthy also wrote the ending theme for Enterprise called Archer's Theme.
Yeah, I always loved his theme for Star Trek Generations, the closing theme that he wrote for that. That's a really catchy Star Trek theme.
All of them, in all honesty, to me at least, definitely the first 6, and probably every other one that I saw. The movies benefited from really, really good scoring and composition, whether it was Jim Horner or Goldsmith. I don't think anybody dropped the ball on anything when it came to the musical scores.
Yeah, he also wrote a pretty catchy. Dennis McCarthy also wrote a pretty catchy theme for Star Trek: The Next Generation before they decided to use the TMP theme. Yeah, you can probably go find it on YouTube, and it was on the original Next Generation album as well.
It was weird. The countdown froze for a second or two, but it's back again. Yeah. So it must be a hiccup in the file that I encrypted. Sorry about that, guys, but I'll keep an eye open for it. The episodes are about 5 minutes shorter. They come in about 45 minutes piece, so they run about 5 minutes shorter than what we're used to on the original series. Yeah, I have to admit that I'm one of those people that I wish that they had gone with something else other than A Faith in the Heart for Enterprise for the opening thing. I don't know. I just didn't like the concept of a pop tune being used, because I think Rod Stewart had done it not too long ago when that came out, if I remember correctly. But all things considered, it was real. What they did with it in the intro was very well done. It did match exactly, the imagery that they chose. Oh man, look at that. Red, yellow, and red, gold, and blue. I never thought I'd ever see any of those guys in that. I saw Colmenian something about a month ago, some movie out of England or whatever, looks a little older, and it's still Comey, man. I love him. One of the most underrated actors to ever appear on the series. And when you consider how many years that he and Michael Dorn both did, I mean, because, Colm was there from the beginning with Deep Space Nine, so he obviously had to leave the last 3 years of Next Gen to be able to do it.
I saw where he's getting some sort of honor from some Irish acting group. I forget the exact what group is giving him, but they're giving him some sort of lifetime achievement award.
So I guess this sort of, again, we don't know who built the props or where they were built, but yeah, we've seen them interact with the original series props by this point. That was a question, I think, earlier on. So they obviously acquired them one way or the other. The Trekkie in me wonders, because I'm pretty sure that this episode brought out the Trekkie in every one of the cast members. So I can't help but wondering how many of those props may not have been accounted for at the end of this episode, or were there props that, literally just fell apart because the cast kept playing with it simply because of the nostalgia factor? What happens if you open and close a tricorder prop, 50 times in a row, or maybe it falls apart. I don't know.
Oh, they did such a beautiful job recreating these sets.
Yeah.
Just gorgeous.
Yeah.
I saw that movie, No Way Up. Yes. Very, very good role for him.
I'm sorry, this is so funny, them not knowing how to work the elevator.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, that was incredible the way it worked.
Yeah.
It's right up there with, Scotty picking up the mouse in The Wrath of Khan. Hello?
Yeah. Oh, computer.
Computer.
The keyboard. How quaint.
Yeah.
And I guess it's actually kind of interesting. I always made the assumption, I guess, prior to this, that anybody who was an engineer or, they would have had an affection for old Federation technology. Now, obviously, O'Brien had no such affection for turbo-lift technology and stuff like that he had no idea that it was a combination voice and the twist of the handle.
Right.
I can't help but think over and over again how lucky we were with the cinematography in the DS9 portions of this episode, because just look at the contrast between the command gold that Ben's in and the red, engineering red from Jadzia. The picture practically glows.
They really did a great job matching the lighting, the color scheme, the style from the original series.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, we know enough about the original series and the way that that Jerry did the gel lights and stuff. So that for them to have made this match, that was because they went in and they took great pains to duplicate what he did, which is something most people never do. They didn't continue on with it when he left in the beginning of the third season. So this definitely was something that I think was as much fun for them to do and to plan up as it was for us to watch.
Something I've been meaning to do is go back and rewatch the original episode and see if there was actually a cocktail waitress in the bar in the original Trouble.
There was. I can tell you there was, Michael. I just watched the episode here recently.
Did they look similar?
The background extra that they matched to the actress for this show?
Yeah, as I recall, I think they're pretty well matched as far as costumes and things go. And it was a brunette. It was a brunette waitress that was in the background. At least one of them. I think there was a blonde that walks up to the bar at the same time Kirk and Spock, or Kirk's having a drink and Spock's standing there with him, and they're talking about the Quadro-Triticale. There's a blonde waitress that walks up and brings a tray up to the thing right about the same time up to the bar. So listening to Michael and Denise Akuda and a couple of them,
the worst scene they said they had was matching the chairs and the bar scene and stuff like that. And so evidently they got in contact with John Dwyer, and they said the company's gone out of business. So they actually bought one chair, made molds out of it, and then put them in the bar, and then some of the other ones on the Enterprise and stuff like that. And so they actually bought one chair and remolded it and made all the chairs.
Wow.
If you remember, does anybody remember if when they made two captain's chairs? One was used on screen, the other was in case something went wrong that never got used. But does anybody know whether or not they literally took the old Madison Company chairs and built around it, or whether they just fabricated something that looked like it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure how practical it would be to actually go back in to, and grab the actual chair and then try to do what they did back in the 60s.
Right.
I mean, they weren't as tight on Deep Space Nine as they were in the original series for budget, but it seems to me that, it probably would have been way too expensive and time-wise.
Well, wasn't this one supposed to be the most expensive one at the time up until Battlestar Galactica?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they blew the budget on this one really, really bad. And ironically, they in that making of the making of DS9, the trials, they talked about that, and they said, ironically, that was one of the things that was better about it coming midway through the 5th season, was that, all the money that they spend in pre-production leading up to that, they knew that they were going to have to be challenged, and they would have to try to use synergy in the other episodes early in the production season to help out with it, because it still ended up being like way. I read the number, but I can't remember it. But it was significantly over budget. If it had been a Desilu production, they probably never would have worked in the studio again. But yes, this was extraordinary. I love this.
Yeah. Rewatching it, I took a great delight in the way that the Doctor came up with that stress excuse for why O'Brien couldn't do his job.
Yeah, he was thinking fast on his feet.
Yeah. Yeah, I had forgotten that until I saw it last night.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if this is midway through the 5th season, so I'm not sure yet if we had already established the fact that Bashir had been genetically altered as a child to make him smarter. As that comes into a fairly significant storyline, involving him and then some other people who are also modified, but are the reasons why, aside from just the potential to do great damage, the reasons why the modifications were not desirable, because for most people it didn't work. It overall hurt the child rather than making him better.
Yeah, what's interesting is that even now, today's astronauts, we're always studying stress and circadian rhythms and stuff like that to make their life better on orbit, because it sucks.
Yeah, anything you can do. Yeah.
Yep.
I miss Renee Aubergenois. I think is that Forgive me, those of you who can say it, and I can't, but that's my best. He was a great, great actor. I loved him in, ironically, Benson. It was the first time, and how ironic that would be that introduced me actually to him and to Phillips. What's his name? The guy who played Neelix, Ethan Phillips, in the same show.
See, I remember him from the original MASH movie.
Yes.
Playing the original Father Mulcahy.
Father Mulcahy, that's right. Yep, I do too. Man's had an extremely long and productive career in acting, really.
Now, wasn't this one of the communicators that Steve Horst replicated for for this one. I'm not sure about all the other props, but I think the communicators were reproduced.
That would make sense. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but that
No, you're right.
because they're the ones that get the closest scrutiny and close-ups and such. Oh, there's a question I've been thinking to ask you, David, for a while, and Michael, because you guys have both been up there. David goes up there quite often. I know that James Cawley loves to get as many of the original Phase 2 props and artifacts as he can. Do you know whether or not he actually has up there one of the Phase 2 communicators that were built?
I don't recall seeing. He does?
I think he does.
I don't think it's on display there in the museum part of the set tour, I don't think. Or at least it wasn't last time I was there a year ago.
Yeah, because he's got one of the original phasers sitting out on a prop. Then he had to pull into the back. But he had one of the collectors up there and stuff like that actually had a couple items and stuff like that. The Universal Translator, which was amazing. And what they did is they had the Universal Translator. It had a wire that ran down, and so it was triggered and stuff like that from somebody off screen, which was amazing.
Yeah, there may be more because I'm just in the middle of doing research on this now. Some of you folks may actually be aware I'm doing it, but for Phase 2, Roddenberry reached out to Jim Kirk, who was most probably best known for owning Starfleet Command, that sold props and stuff like that. And he was, for whatever reason, Jim impressed him enough that Roddenberry had him build 10 phasers for Phase 2. And then Phase 2, of course, did not get picked up. It transitioned in the motion picture, and they can't, and there's a complete revamp of everything, including the communicators going into the handset or the wristband. And so Roddenberry kept all 10 of them, but he handed them out to friends and family folks. I mean, he would hand them out as benefit, gifts to different people. So they're spread all over the place. I don't know how many of them survived. I think I've come in contact with somebody who has one of them, but we're not sure yet, which is what I was asking about. I didn't know if James had one, because then at least there's one that can photographs that can be eyeballed or something. But that was kind of neat. I mean, that was done in the mid 76 to 77, somewhere in that area. And unlike the original communicators, they were functional. They actually had the lights and I believe sound in all of them. But I could have that reversed. I know that it'd be another 10 years before a professionally built prop that you could buy from the conventions and stuff would have both. Usually one of the others. I think the one I've actually been looking at has the lights but no sound. There's no speaker in it. But I do think that the prototypes that Jim built for Gene had both. But there's very, very little documented about what they look like. I don't think anybody's going to take any. There was no I've not seen any photos whatsoever of them being taken apart. I do believe one was sold in the Greg Gene auction, but I can't find any reference to any internal pictures or anything like that might have been different. How?
If you watch, we missed. I'm sure the screenshot didn't capture. I wasn't paying attention, but when they were working on the panel earlier, in one of the scenes earlier, there's actually the PVC pipes running in there that says GNDN, and it had, I can't remember, 936 or some number on it, and that is the same numbering or lettering that they used in the original series, which GNDN is goes nowhere, does nothing, and when it came out later that's what it stood for. But I like that the fact that they actually reproduced that in these new updated scenes that have been inserted in here.
Mm-hmm. One thing I thought was kind of funny was Doug Drexler was talking about, like that red greeble there on the wall. he was talking about how they would just find these strange shapes and slap them on the wall in the original series, and how for recreating this he was having to painstakingly draw that out in AutoCAD to give to the Paramount shop to painstakingly reproduce things that in the original series were just, this looks interesting, slap it up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice to see you, Sebastian. I loved the fact that when Jadzia goes through the typical, female original series cast appreciation society or whatever, that, she starts remarking, and then, she starts remarking and Ben thinks she's talking about Kirk. But I think the funniest thing was, that she then relates that she had an affair with McCoy.
Exactly.
And it's like, I thought that was just an absolutely wonderful way to take something and, and spin it in a direction that none of us anticipated.
Exactly.
Yeah. He had the hands of a surgeon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, we're now up to what I think is the funniest bit in the whole episode.
Oh, yeah. Those are Klingons?
Yeah. It is something we do not discuss with outsiders.
That was just like, okay, that's not the best screenshot. I'm not flattering the lady. I apologize. Looks more like Hee-Haw than Star Trek, but yeah.
I wonder if she's a blonde under that wig.
I would. Yeah, you're right. I'd not be surprised if she was, but the thing looks like those old big Russian fur caps they used to wear.
Although the outfit she's wearing is very Roddenberry-ish. Let's put it that way.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, that's some classic William Ware thesis there.
Yeah.
I collect thousands and thousands of photographs. I have no idea what I will ever do with all of them. I'm trying desperately to get them organized on Pinterest, but it's a losing battle. But I stumbled across a behind-the-scenes publicity picture of Shatner and the model who played in what a little girl's made of. She was the model that the cross suit, and the publicity photo could not be used for publicity. 100%. I can see why I had not seen the photo before, because the angle showed entirely too much of what isn't covered. Because William was famous for what a little spirit gum and glue can do. But
and those were the times back then. I mean, in the 60s.
So Sebastian just brought up an absolutely wonderful question. I'm surprised I didn't actually say it. But for those of you who may not know, the idea was that the Klingons experimented with augmentation, and that this kind of hybrid Klingon was a result of that. How did people, like Sebastian said, how did you guys all collectively feel when that came up? Was that like an eye roller, or was it like, oh, that's a unique way, I hadn't thought of it before?
Well, I mean, I thought it was a fine explanation for it. It made sense and all. It did take a little bit of the mystery out of it, though, because it is something we do not discuss with outsiders. Just kind of made it like, oh, this is some dirty family secret that they just won't talk about. And, I can see why they don't. From the explanation from Enterprise, but
right,
it was still kind of funny just keeping it this. Oh, we don't talk about it. It's a secret. Yeah.
All right, so I did biomolecular genetics when in medical school, so it's like, it probably would have been better is that there's two, genetic variants on Klingon rather than the genetic manipulation, and it's just like that was too easy, and it's just like, how do you get human DNA when you've got a partial pump, with two technical hearts on the Klingons and stuff like that, and the rapid rate, it's like too convenient. Yeah. So for me, it's like,
Okay.
I thought it was a pretty decent explanation, honestly. I mean, it was, as you said, Jim, it was kind of one of those things where it was like, I hadn't thought about it that way. That's a pretty great explanation. So
When they knew when they knew they were going to be canceled, they spent a lot of time working and writing and planning episodes to address things. We got the whole in the mirror darkly, I think it was, with the Defiant, and then of course the Augment stuff.
Wow, Terry Farrell handing out tribbles.
Yeah,
Wonderful to have been there to see.
And this is season 5. Okay, yeah. She would. It would be after season 6 that she did not want to be subjected to whatever it was and whoever it was that was harassing her. So she walked off the series. Didn't do season 7.
I don't.
Okay.
I wish they hadn't killed her off. Yeah, I think that was. Yeah, I wish they hadn't killed her off because she was. I mean, she was really, really, really good.
Yes, she was. And so, except I think it was her first acting job right out of college or whatever. So she was exceptionally naive and green when she was hired. And
she had done a TV series before that. It hadn't lasted that long, but it was some TV series about a modeling agency. I forget the name of it.
But yeah, she was a great actress. And I think the way that we know, especially on Deep Space Nine, especially on the Gen 2 stuff going forward, how much input the actors did have into their characters. So I think you clearly see how she grew in the part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a couple things here that Sebastian's going on. I mean, first would be right there. I mean, that's the whole idea behind Khan.
Yep.
The super soldiers. Yeah, that would have been a better explanation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
The Angosians. One would think Cardassians would have attempted, and of course the Dominion created the Jem'Hadar. Yeah, I would definitely believe the Cardassians definitely would have tried. Ironically, the one race that I think might not try it, even though you would think they would have the skill set and the aptitude for it, are the Romulans. Because when we found out about Romulus and Remus and the fact that they were basically like two separate species, one, subjugating the other, that was what I always sort of had on the back of my mind for the Klingons. I just figured somehow it would be related to that. So the dual species, and then I guess is it Andar? There's the Andorians and Andarians. I think the Andorians are blue. The Andarians lived in caves, and and they're light sensitive, and everything's white. A really good reason, for them to have gone on like that.
Mm-hmm. I was surprised how easily Darwin or whatever rolled over once he got captured.
Yeah.
I mean, it was necessary for the plot, let's wrap this up. But I mean, it's just like, oh yes, and I hit a bomb in a Tribble and it's going to go off in an hour, but no, I'm not going to tell you where.
I did like the fact that it actually ended up being the reason that one Tribble ends up bouncing on Kirk after all the others have come out.
Oh, that was so beautiful that, Terry Farrell tosses it and then it hits Kirk.
Yep. Yeah.
Well,
nice. So.
Well, they contacted Lincoln Enterprises and stuff like that, which Michelle. Well, so they made it well over 1,400 Tribbles for this thing. Like, ooh, lands.
Yeah, a ton of them were sold over the years at Star Trek: The Exhibition in Vegas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Paper Dolls. That was the name of the show.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So Sebastian's bringing up some good points on Berman. I have mixed feelings on Berman. I will tell you, I haven't really dug into him as much as I obviously ended up, going into Gene Roddenberry's past and his personal relationships. Whatever happened, definitely something happened. Terry is definitely not making something out of nothing. She continued, obviously, to stay with the cast and fandom, even though she was not there the last year, technically being our first real royal couple, I guess, marrying Adam. So the first time we've seen a marriage, I guess, of two primary, unless there's somebody else, I don't think there is. I don't see two primary or even secondary Star Trek names actually getting married. So that was kind of neat. I like that.
I mean, didn't Nana Visitor marry Alexander Siddig for a while?
Yes, and that was the whole idea behind the birth thing. Yeah. And I didn't think about that. You're probably right. I didn't think about it because it actually happened, I think, while they were on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I don't know if they're still together or not. I mean, because one of the things that all of the cast has done exceptionally well is they are not dirty laundry people in any way, shape, or form. If there were idiosyncrasies among the cast or whatever, or small beasts like there were in the original series, and even on Voyager to a much larger degree, even than the original series, they don't make a peep. That group of people, we know the next gen cast love each other, but those Deep Space Nine people are very, very close as well, I think. Sebastian points out that Nana and Alexander broke up a few years later. And then Casey Biggs was married to Roxanne Dawson.
Oh, okay.
So that's a definite from what I was talking about, Thank you. I wasn't quite sure I could remember the word sometimes when I look back on it. Nice to see you, Gene.
I get a kick out of this scene because when they zoom in to the pile of quadrotriticale, it doesn't look quite the same as it did in the original series. It actually, in this, looks more like the blue gravel you put in the bottom of an aquarium.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so I just found out that Santa Claus isn't real, guys. I'm so sorry, but I had to be told. Terry and Adam have apparently divorced. So much for my entire, admiration thought about, winning through life and happy ever after. I did not know that. Thank you, Gabe. I'm glad you mentioned that because I would have babbled on about that. That's like, Camelot and the Kennedys with me. So, excuse me. Oh, okay. Gabe says they actually, Casey and Roxanne actually divorced before they got married, but that still qualifies for the scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Here's they planted the bomb. Okay, how are we supposed to scan for all of these?
Yeah, that whole thing, again, plot contrivances for time. They only had so much amount of new footage they could put in here. But yeah, the concept that they couldn't immediately especially with the, even with the well, maybe it's because the tricorder was that old. I don't know. I just have a hard time thinking that, the Deep Space Nine folks would not have been able to zero in on an explosive device when they're within like 10 feet of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It could very well be that they took the time travel thing so seriously that they made sure that the equipment they took back with them was replicated perfectly with no potential for future technology. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, you got
and coffee.
You got to love Scotty. Aye, they're in the machinery.
Yeah.
That
fair point about hard to detect explosive.
Yes, you're right. Definitely, that they may have actually used. I mean, we've recently seen how incredibly effective ghost guns are when made out of polymer. So,
Yeah.
what I absolutely love is that look at the faces of Nimoy and Lurie, and no one has a surprised look on their face whatsoever.
Right.
I don't know about you, but I would have been like shocked, right down to my shoes.
Yep.
When all those tribbles pop out.
1,700,000 blah 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 of them.
Assuming
I
one
love
tribble.
the smug look on Terry Farrell's face when he
Yes.
says that.
Yeah.
This was
Kirk, I'm going to hold you responsible for this.
yeah.
And Nana's.
I take this project very seriously. It is you I take lightly.
Yes.
I mean, so just some of the classic lines. I was not aware that 12 Klingons made a swarm.
Yeah.
Well, they cut emotion out when the Klingons trying to justify coming out on the ship. He beams over, I guess. I don't remember exactly how it happens, but when the Klingon captain goes, our ships are not, we don't have unessential. He actually drew an hourglass shape with his hands when he delivered the line. So there was a strong indication, we don't carry women around in our ships to have recreation with. And the way they edited the episode, you can see the remainder or part of the movement, but not the whole thing. It was never, the whole thing was never brought out. But if you know that he's doing it when the line's delivered, you can watch the hand movement to go slightly off screen to realize it.
One implication of this episode that they didn't really hit it, but the suggestion that tribbles are extinct. That Klingons literally wiped out all tribbles.
Yes,
The great
right.
tribble
At the end of the episode.
Yeah, they hunted them down and wiped them out. Yep.
Yeah.
I think they wiped out the entire home planet.
Yeah,
That's what I think. Yeah, I think they did. I think there was.
Yes.
I don't remember where that was actually.
Worf said that when he first saw a tribble there in the bar.
Yes.
Okay.
They're a pestilence. They're an infestation.
Yep.
Which had Odo remarking about, they must sing songs of the Great Tribble War, whatever.
So Gabe, first off,
you.
Gabe, welcome. I don't recognize your name from previous live streams. It may be that you chatted and I ignored you, and if so, I deeply apologize. Your participation's been wonderful today because you've been a great person at pricking conversation with us, and I want to bring that out. But ironically, I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't know that. It just literally was completely not in because I got so wrapped up in Cisco and Kirk together that it was my compatriots here when we all watched it earlier this week that remarked to me about, they talked about that scene was not the actual scene, at the bridge at the end. And I didn't even pick up on that because I was so blinded by what we saw. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, Gabe, because I've learned that no matter how much you think you know about Star Trek, I guarantee there are some basic things that'll catch you by surprise when you see them that everybody else seems to have noticed and you just missed in your own little prism of focus.
Yeah, it was cool the way they because we missed that whole scene, like you said, where they're on the bridge talking about what happened to the tribbles and where they went, and they're all passing the buck to each other, and then Scotty, of course,
Even Klingons.
yes.
Thank you, SWAT. I refuse to use computer or calculator, so I will just take your word for it.
Where are the tribbles?
Yeah.
Well, I gave them to the Klingons. It's like, you did what?
So, season 5, was that the Klingon War, or was that season 4? That was season 4, where they were at war with the Klingons. Is that right?
Yes.
I bring it up just because I'm wondering what they did with these tribbles.
Oh, God.
And it would have been really convenient to stick them on a Klingon ship if they were still at war.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think, Sebastian just chimed in. Yeah, I do think it was a 4 to 5 arc.
Yeah.
Because they resolved the Klingon Empire and the Federation together fairly quickly in season 5 to set the scale for the Dominion War.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew at that point that, they knew that they were dealing with Founders and Jem'Hadar, and then there was a question, what do you do with the Cardassians? What do you do with the Romulans, which they answered quite exquisitely in the Pale Moonlight. So yeah, I think that I've often wondered, but have no proof of it, that the idea and the formulation of the Dominion War storyline, caused them to wrap some storylines up differently than it would have played out had the Dominion War not been that logical step.
Oh yeah, the question came up: the Klingons engineered a predator for the Tribbles. Yes, the Glomer. It was in the animated series.
Yep.
Right.
Cyrano Jones had one.
Yeah, I had one, and one in the animated series was trying to get this giant Tribble one. It's like, too big.
After he was going to spend 17.8 years or 0.9 years cleaning up the space station.
Yeah, and didn't end up spending that much time on it, obviously, if I remember correctly, especially as we find out in the animated series.
Right.
So this takes us through our first Deep Space Nine, and I want to thank everybody who joined us, especially if we have people who are here because they like Deep Space Nine and figured, hey, let's check this out, and then stumble upon our little world. You will be seeing some more Deep Space Nine. I think that the next live stream we're probably going to do, if not next, the one right after that will probably be what we left behind, which is an extraordinary look back by the cast and producers of Deep Space Nine that was done just a few years back after Deep Space Nine was discovered by the Netflix population and basically saved. I loved it. I always did love it from the first time I saw it. But that kind of episodic serial arc was the kiss of death for most applications or most shows back then when you looked at syndication. And so it was, if you didn't watch Deep Space Nine or didn't know it, it was difficult to pop into a single episode and get hooked. Binge watching changed our world. And so we'll be taking a look at that in the next episode. There will still be more things on the original series. Do not fret over that. But you will start to see some of the Deep Space Nine stuff begin to creep in at the same time as we move into trying to engage another generation of fans to make our family just a little bit larger and to hopefully benefit from hearing from fresh new minds, thoughts, and ideas from folks that we haven't heard from yet. So I think that's going to pretty much carry us through 1987. I agree 100%. This was fun. I really had. This is the only watch party I ever did that I didn't take notes beforehand or make a little bullet list of what I wanted. I was insistent. I watched it earlier. These guys did too. They're probably in the same because we didn't compare notes either. But I just wanted to. Okay, I just watched it before, so maybe I took some things then, maybe I'll know some things now, and I just wanted to bounce off us and you out there at the same time. And I think it worked wonderfully. So I don't think I've seen this degree of interaction in things that we've done before.
Agreed.
So for those of you who are in our Patreon group, please hang on. You don't have to leave the studio. I'm going to end the live stream in a minute and keep us in there, and we can decide what and if and how that's going to go on beyond that. Everybody else, we will see you in approximately 2 weeks' time. Take care. God bless. Stay safe. If you or anyone you know is in Los Angeles,
yes. Take care, everyone.
Your thoughts and prayers. Take care, everybody, and I will see you next time.
Bye-bye.